everybody, it is Steve, your friendly neighborhood lawn gnome. Welcome back to another video over here on That's Comical. And if you're watching and it happens to be a Wednesday, happy new comic book day. I'm very glad that we're here today. Of course, I'm with Cammie, and Cammie, it's always a pleasure to have great conversations with you about comic books and everything else in between.
Agreed.
So it's been a long time coming, and it's about time that the two of us got together for another DC animated live show. And it's just because of the fact that it was my idea to think that maybe it would be much easier if we just took a culmination of all the films and just go through them all in one video, especially considering the fact that it was a very odd year when it came to DC animated films, because there's two series of films that we always talk about. We talk about what is now known as the DC Universe animated films and the current story arc that we're in now, which apparently has been dubbed the Tomorrowverse, thanks to the fact that the first film was Superman Man of Tomorrow. And then we have the other DC animation film library where it's just individual standalones, although sometimes we will get a sequel here and there, like one of them that we're about to talk about today, to a degree. And because of the fact that there was only one DC Universe film and three DC animated films, three DC animated original films, I basically said it would be weird to just have one episode for that one singular DC Universe film and then have another episode dedicated to all of the rest. So the good news is, from what I'm hearing in regards to 2023, we're going to be having a very strong year for both sides, including one DC animated original movie that I am really looking forward to, and that is Justice League Ruby. I am so excited to see these two franchises clash, because apparently they seem to be working very well and successfully in the comics. So, Cammie, I hope you're ready for another great DC animated film discussion.
I am. I had a lot of fun with these films, so I'm ready to talk about them.
All right. So the first one that we're going to be talking about is, of course, the DC Universe film, and that is Green Lantern Beware My Power. Cammie knows this very well about me, that I am clearly a big Green Lantern fan. I think that Green Lantern is one of the best characters in all of DC Comics, not just because of the fact that I love all the individual human Green Lanterns as well as all of the alien Green Lanterns, but just because of the fact that if there's one thing that I can say that's very positive about Green Lantern is that the lore of the Green Lantern is just so rich and so deep. It only gets me more excited every single time there is anything Green Lantern out there. I mean, I remember growing up loving the typical Spider-Man, Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, watching the Super Friends and all of that, but I still remember when I started reading comic books and was watching Superman the Animated Series, and when they finally got to the third season and we saw Green Lantern in the DC animated universe, and this was based on the current Green Lantern that was in the comics, who was Kyle Rayner, and I loved that I finally sort of understood what Green Lantern was all about and really started to learn about the mythos. And I just said to myself, oh, wow, this is just so cool. And as I continued to watch Green Lantern and see the Jon Stewart version in the Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, and more importantly, see a lot of the mythos roped into that show, but then hearing about what was going on in the comic books, that just got me all the more excited. And now that I finally got back into comics and read what may be one of the greatest stories in comic book history, and definitely the greatest Green Lantern story, and that, of course, is the Blackest Night, which has so many intricate pieces to it and so many links to other great DC comic stories, you know, knowing that we were finally going to get Green Lantern in this universe got me very, very excited. And when I first watched this movie, I didn't really like it as much as I do now, but I still don't love this film, only because of the fact that this current Tomorrowverse as a whole has so many flaws in it, and I just wish they'll finally get their asses in gear and finally fix these problems. So, Cammie, what do you agree, or could I see you nodding your head, or is there something that I might have forgotten to add?
No, I agree to an extent. because again, you know that my comic book knowledge isn't as vast as yours. I'm getting there, but it's a slow crawl. So I don't recognize all the flaws to the same capacity that you do, but I definitely will agree with you upon watching this film. It's not one of my favorites, but there are so many qualities and attributes of this film that I really do love, and I am really becoming a really big Jon Stewart fan. I like him a little bit more than Hal Jordan, and I know Hal Jordan is like, you know, the quintessential everybody loves him because he's nostalgic, but I don't think I'm that well versed to fully encompass his history, and so I can really relate to Jon Stewart's character, and I think he's a lot more modern, which I can relate to. There's just so many qualities and characteristics of him. He's a little bit cynical, but he's a lovable character. Even at his worst, when he's having a bad day, he's just a really fun character. So in terms of the overall, though, I'm finding that I like the side characters in anytime we visit the Green Lantern world. However, I will say, even from a comic book perspective, there's just something very nostalgic and very important that centers around the Green Lantern Corps that you really do need to understand its origin to really fully understand a lot of these side stories that you do read, whether it's just embarking in the world of animation like we do here or reading comic books physically. It really does find itself coming to the forefront quite a lot.
Well, I will agree with you to a certain degree on what you said about Hal Jordan, him being the nostalgic, quintessential Green Lantern. You're absolutely right. He is. But there's a lot of people out there that really don't like Hal Jordan. I mean, like I said, personally, my favorite Green Lantern is the one that I grew up with, and that's Kyle Rayner. I love Kyle Rayner because of the fact that his actual alternate identity is that he is an illustrator for the Daily Planet. He draws cartoons. So because of the fact that he has that creative mindset, Ron Mars, who created him, brought something to the Green Lantern that really wasn't shown much in regards to any of the Green Lanterns that came before it, and that's specifically in the constructs that he creates. Sure, Hal Jordan and the others, they did the giant fists and they did the laser beams and the shields, but Kyle Rayner, because he had that creative mindset, he like built himself an entire suit of armor and a horse, or he built an entire artillery of battle tanks. Like, he just added so much more because of the fact that he was a illustrator and brought that creative mindset. Jon Stewart, on the other hand, was probably the least used Green Lantern up until Bruce Timm and Paul Dini and Dwayne McDuffie and all these guys that were linked to the Justice League cartoon said, we need to bring Jon Stewart into it. And you're right, a character who, you know, was like Hal as being a soldier in the United States, but here's one that wasn't necessarily like Hal Jordan being a pilot. This was a guy that was on the ground in the heat of battle, suffering from PTSD, and he does bring that to a lot of his own personal character in the comics, and we see that a great deal when Jeff Johns used a portion of his story to show Jon Stewart, but there's so much more to him. And the fact that there's a lot of artists and writers out there right now that really feel that Jon Stewart is the Green Lantern we need to see more of. And I agree a great deal, along with the fact that I think we need to see Guy Gardner as well. I mean, Guy Gardner is a hothead ex-police officer from Baltimore. I mean, he's just really crazy fun. That's what I like about him. He's got an attitude, and that's what I really like about him. But yes, I agree with you. Jon Stewart is a character that is definitely depicted very well in this specific film, but I think that the biggest part that was probably the great surprise in this film, and I was curious to know if you spotted it or if you even remembered it, and that was the fact that we got Adam Strange. I did not know that he was going to be in this movie, and the fact that we actually went back to that DC Showcase short, I was like, wow, that DC Showcase short doesn't suck as much as it used to these days because of what they did with it in this specific film.
And that's what I'm saying. For me, a lot of these Green Lantern adaptations, it's really the side characters. I mean, even in this particular film, I once again, I fell in love with the Green Arrow. There's just something about his humor and his wit and the way he stills every scene that he's in. So yeah, to see another character from a showcase short and have that integrate in, and like you're saying, that short was kind of, yeah, you know, wasn't the greatest thing on earth, but it really just brought everything into the forefront. So DC continues to do this and bring in those animated shorts into these, you know, longer live actions. I think it's really going to be a lot of fun because we're not going to be anticipating seeing some of these characters again, but when we do, it's like, oh my gosh, that's so cool, because you're going to relate it back. So yeah, it was a complete surprise for me, but it was a fun surprise because he was a solid character in this particular adaptation.
Yes, and Adam Strange is a character that I really want to learn a lot more about because I really don't read many Adam Strange comics or whatever comics that he's in, but I do know that he has shown up in various comics that I have read. And another really big positive about this specific film is even though it's really hard to do it based on the running time of this specific film, and usually all of the DC animated films, is that there's a lot of nods to a lot of Green Lantern stories from the comics in here. The story that takes place in regards to Hal Jordan, that is based on an amazing 4-part story called Emerald Twilight. And it actually is a critical piece that introduces Kyle Rayner in the comics and will eventually play a crucial point in great stories like the Sinestro Corps War and Blackest Night. So the fact that they did that was really great. I love that they brought in the mythos of the Rann-Thanagar War, which is where Hawkgirl comes into play. That's a very crucial piece of the cosmic universe of the DC universe, as well as the Green Lantern mythos as well. Also really like that they did talk a lot about Hal Jordan before we actually found Hal Jordan. That was another interesting twist that I did not know was going to happen in the comics, because I like that when John Stewart first shows up, he actually mentions the Lantern Ring, and then Green Arrow asks where it came from. It said it came from Hal Jordan. He's like, Hal Jordan's dead? And that was definitely a very interesting thing, because it is true that Ollie and Barry Allen and Hal Jordan do have a very tight bond in the comics.
Yeah, and you keep mentioning Kyle Rayner. See, like for me, again, that's something I haven't really embarked on. So I know the Hal Jordan, and now I know John Stewart. So and now I have a whole other area of the Green Lantern Corps that I really need to latch onto and learn about. But yeah, there's just something very unique about the Green Lantern Corps that just encapsulates all these different characters from yesteryear and today, and it does it in such a beautiful way that it really sucks you in, whether you've been a reader and or watcher of these animated films for a while, or if you're just coming in new to the program.
And I also think one of the biggest strong points about this film is the atmosphere of the story. It's a real sci-fi noir mystery. I did not really expect what this was going to be. I really have to be honest with that. And like I said, we mentioned characters like Hawkgirl, who was fantastic in this film. I mean, they captured the whole concept of the hatred between Rann and Thanagar, which I really think was done absolutely brilliantly. And I also love the banter between the characters. All the characters are just fun to watch. That's another really big positive thing. Even when characters like Sinestro and the Yellow Lanterns show up, you know, it's very interesting how every single time a new character shows up, the whole story takes a very interesting shift and a very interesting turn. And it's really crazy to see how the story goes in terms of the feeling and the atmosphere until we get to the very end.
Yeah, I agree. But it's done in such a flawless way. You know, you don't feel like you're being pulled out of a story, which often happens when you introduce a different character, you know, mid-scene, or you can, it's something that can easily take you out of the current film and even change your perception, because you're thinking about where you've seen the character and their origin stories and other universes and stuff, you know. But there's just something, again, very unique when having a Green Lantern at the core of the story, where when these side characters are introduced, you get another piece of the story. You get another, layer to that dimension of that character, which works very flawlessly in these films. So to have someone like Adam Strange and Hot Girl, like you were just talking about, integrate into these, you have where there's a unique dialogue that takes place that really does get you interested in other universes and other movies and other origins where these characters derived from.
Yeah, but even though we've had a great deal of good things to say, I do have some major issues with this film, and not necessarily just this film on its own, but the whole current Tomorrowverse storyline in general. The thing that I truly despise the most is the fact that we seem to really be rushing through this storyline, and there is really no depth to one of the main pieces of it, and that is the Justice League itself. It's like when we last saw the Justice League, it was the end of the Long Halloween, and that's post-credit scene where Green Arrow and the Flash are at Batman's door and Alfred answers it. The big question that I had there was, when the hell did Green Arrow get recruited? And then when I take a look at this movie, the Justice League seems to be established. We see characters like Vixen and the Martian Manhunter as part of it, and apparently Hal Jordan was part of it too. But I'm like, how long did it take them to actually do this? Like, I think Jerry Seinfeld said it best. Like, how long have I been asleep? What year is it? Like, what's been going on here? Like, what are these gaps that we've been missing? What has been going on throughout this entire formation of the Justice League? I was like, was there any chemistry between Superman and any of these new characters? Like, how did they recruit Green Arrow and these other people? Like, what has been going on here? Are we ever going to get those answers?
For me, as someone who has seen, I would see probably half of these DC animated films, which is still pretty good for as late as I started. I'm wondering if there's some kind of underlying, we're going to come back and revisit all of that, because I do know that the little bit of research that I've done, there's like a 16 story arc within these 49 now films, and then there's a ton of standalone. So I'm wondering if they're going to go back and kind of integrate some of these questions that we would have, as continuous watchers, that would start to make some of these things make sense. Because I agree, there's a lot of things that are just kind of thrown in our faces. But I do think that's a big fault of the DC universe as a whole. I think that Marvel flushes out their characters and their storylines very well, and we kind of get this continuous continuity to where you can watch these films in such an order that things start to make sense. You can integrate characters and storylines and pieces, whereas DC just kind of vomits these things on you, whether it's from the past or the future or whatever the case may be, and they're just kind of hoping that you'll either love it or catch up, or I don't know. I think there's a lot of weight that goes into a DC fan, assuming that because you're watching these films, you are an automatic reader of the comics, and so therefore all of this is going to make sense. But at some point, you're going to have a retaliation, and I think in a way, DC fans can have kind of retaliated in a lot of ways, where we are starting to speak up about these infractions and things that are bothering us. It's like, we're all for an animated universe, but make it make sense to us. Give us something that we can, structurally watch. Don't just throw these characters or these story arcs into an already existing story, and we're just supposed to kind of put the pieces together ourselves. That doesn't make the entertainment fun.
Well, I just want to say, Cammie, that I truly appreciate your optimism, but as an old friend of mine said, just look for Big Blue in the corner, because I don't think we're going to get that. Because a perfect example would be Young Justice. We're already waiting for season number 5, and we got a great first season, and then in the beginning of season 2, we got a 5-year time jump, and we are still waiting for what took place in that 5-year time gap, and I don't think we're ever going to get it, especially if we never get a season 5, because I did not really enjoy season 4 as much as I enjoyed the previous seasons, and the cliffhanger that we got for season 4 going into season 5 was so cool. I want it badly, but we'll see what happens. However, you said something about the current DC Universe film library. You are right. There is a 15 arc story in the Flashpoint story arc, which starts with Justice League Flashpoint Paradox and ends with Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, or to a certain degree, the DC Constantine Showcase. They do it well there. I think that 15 story arc, even though some of those films are not great at all, Wonder Woman Bloodlines, just to say a few, I still feel the way they tie everything together was better than anything the MCU ever gave us. And that's just me saying a real big hot button fact there. But they're just not doing it right now with this current Tomorrowverse. And I'm excited, of course. I'm always excited for all the stories that are in store for us. I'm really excited for what 2023 is going to hold, especially considering the fact that we're going to see the Legion of Superheroes next. Really excited to see how that goes, because I know that that's a series of characters that you're very interested in seeing, because I still remember when you gave me that picture and you said, Steven, I know this is a DC logo, but what is this from? And it was the L sticker that you sent me. Oh, that's the Legion of Superheroes. So yeah, you'll get them.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited for that. But no, they're just not doing it right in this specific story arc right now. And I hope that they will close that gap. But the other big issue that I had with this one is also because of the fact that the time constraints are really tough, because they tried to put way too much Green Lantern mythos into such a short film. Because I'm sure that when you were watching this film, seeing is that you are really not that familiar with Green Lantern. If I'm wrong, I'll be surprised, but I'm pretty sure you were sitting watching that movie saying, I wonder how much knowledge Steve has that he can share with me when we discuss this movie. Because there's a lot of great Green Lantern story in there. So many things that I can recommend to people that want to read more Green Lantern.
Remember, you did turn me on to the Green Lantern origin story. So I have dabbled a little bit. No, I'm not as well versed as I could be. But my interest in Green Lantern actually started when I was reading Injustice, because, you know, obviously there's a lot of character introduction within that storyline. And then there was also a two-part series that came out, I want to say it was back in the early 90s, like 91, 92, where DC kind of just did a history of DC, you know, all the different characters and the worlds. And that to me is probably one of the coolest series that I personally own, graphic novel wise, because it does allow someone who considers themselves to be a newbie kind of look at the evolution of DC over time, and different characters that have come and gone, or that reinvent themselves, so to speak, or that DC reinvents. And again, that Green Lantern Corps is always at the center of it. So that's why I say, if you are going to be a continuous reader of DC Comics, it is vitally important that you do know who the Green Lanterns are, who where their origin story started, the type of aliens that they are, you know, these sorts of things, because it will help as DC kind of gives you whiplash with all the different versions of Green Lanterns to kind of keep up with all of that. So no, I was actually surprised in this film. I kept up a little bit better than I thought I would have. And I think it really stems from continuing my knowledge on the back end. I'm, you know, always looking for those older titles, and then always asking you, okay, what do I read next?
And not to, and just to make everybody's life all the more difficult, we cannot leave out the entire other Green Lantern mythos with Alan Scott from the JSA as well, which is also a great, great Green Lantern from the Golden Age. But no, the problem with me and DC when it comes to Green Lantern and these other versions of media is just that they always have the opportunity to make a great Green Lantern project, and they always seem to be held back. That's what happened with the Green Lantern animated series, because with the Green Lantern animated series, we did get introduced to all the Lantern Corps except for one. And you can't really introduce the Black Lantern Corps or the White Lantern Corps without discussing Blackest Night or Brightest Day. You just can't. And especially—
That's where you lose me. When you start getting into all the colors, that's where I definitely can't keep up with
and
you.
that's the problem. That's the problem, because when you got Sinestro in this film per se, you saw a lot of interesting creatures, and and you probably have no idea who they are. That woman that's on his side, that woman's name is Liza Drax. That big brute character, that's Arkillo. They are characters that are very crucial to the Green Lantern / Yellow Lantern mythos, and the whole formation of the Yellow Lantern Corps is a great story onto itself, considering the fact that they do this every single time. And when they did this in Beware My Power, I was even more pissed off. Stop fucking killing Sinestro! For God's sake, stop killing him! There's so much to do with this character. Stop it, for crying out loud. Again, I loved that they introduced the Parallax entity. I loved that scene where Hal held up his fingers with all those Green Lantern rings. That's directly from the story Emerald Twilight. It really is a powerful scene. But oh my God, all the possibilities and the chances they have to redeem themselves, they keep screwing it up. And again, that's another reason why this film is never going to be perfect for me. And maybe that's just because of the fanboy. I mean, like, this is me. The last time I went off like this was when I can't stand how they constantly shaft the Riddler. This is my attitude about Sinestro with them.
No, I agree with you completely. That's their solution every time, and it's not exactly how it should be dealt with, but
I'm gonna recommend.
There's a lot of hiccups in the DC world right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna recommend you a specific story, and I really want you to check it out. You gotta check out Sinestro Corps War. When you read Sinestro Corps War, I then want you to rewatch Green Lantern Beware My Power, and I promise you, you will start yelling at the TV.
Done.
Yeah, that's I mean, it leads into Blackest Night a little later down the line, but I'm like, I will always say to people, when it comes to all the stories that connect to Blackest Night, and believe it or not, it goes, all the stories that connect to Blackest Night go all the way back to 1985's Crisis on Infinite Earths now. It's kind of crazy, but I always say to people, Sinestro Corps War is just the best. It is just because it is hardcore, brutal, nonstop in-your-face action. And what makes me even more angry is the fact that they were gonna make it into an animated movie and it never got off the ground. I was so pissed.
Well, hopefully with all the shakeups going on over there, maybe we'll start to see some better quality product for us.
Oh, trust me, I'm going to throw out names right now. When you get introduced to characters like Saint Walker, Atrocitus, Larfleeze, Star Sapphire, your mind is going to just be blown when you get introduced to every single one of these characters. Although Star Sapphire, you probably already know. Because if you know Sinestro, you know Star Sapphire. Because Star Sapphire is a character that has long since been in the Green Lantern comics and even in the DC animated world. She is a nemesis of Green Lanterns, but the mythos behind the Star Sapphire and the Violet Lantern Corps, oh boy, it's crazy good.
I can't wait to embark more on that, because that is definitely something that is high on my learn more about in terms of DC, because I do feel that it'll make me a better comic reader, having a clear understanding of the Green Lantern Corps.
Yeah, it goes back to everything that I always say. They just got to stop focusing on Superman and Batman, and they just got to open up all of these other major heroes. Like, they've got to give us more Green Lantern. They've got to give us more Flash. They've got to give us more Wonder Woman, and they've got to give us more Aquaman. They really need to open these worlds up.
I agree. But,
so,
they tend to gravitate to what sells.
Look, I'm still going to keep an open mind. I'm always excited for the next DC animated film, especially in this brand new storyline. Like I said, I really appreciate your positivity and your optimism. I hope they do what we want them to do. But like I said, this movie was definitely better the second time around, and it was a lot of fun. I would give it like a 3 stars out of 4.
You're a little more generous than I. Again, I didn't love
it.
Even
or maybe a 2.5.
Kind of like, yeah, that's kind kind of where I landed, 2.5. And the reason for that is there was a lot of it that I still clearly didn't understand. You mentioned the villains. I was very lost in the villains department for this particular film. It started off stronger than I had hoped. I mean, I wasn't really sure. And then we, had that moment where he was kind of just fighting as a civilian on the street before he kind of became the Green Lantern. And then I really got my attention captivated. And then I was really like into it for probably about a good 30 minutes, which is a good core of the movie. But then I was just like, the ending wasn't spectacular. So overall, I would say probably a solid 2.5 for me.
Okay, I'll try and do something that I don't think we'll ever see again. I'll give it 2.75.
Just to give it a little bit more than me.
I 2.5, but I just don't feel like I'm right smack in the middle. But I do agree with you. I don't think it deserves a 3 because it's not good. Like it's okay, but it's not like horrible.
It's okay, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I agree with you there. It's okay.
Okay, so now let's get into the DC original movies. And I gotta be honest with you, I don't know if they're ever gonna do a movie that is better than Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because right now when it comes to the DC original movies, that one is still the absolute best. But I will say I was extremely surprised by the 3 films that we got this year. So I want to start off with Catwoman Hunted. I didn't know what I was going to expect from this film, but I've got to say, it is not the best film I've ever seen, but oh my God, I had so much fun with that movie. This movie made me laugh.
This movie was a lot of fun. It had a good pacing. The characters were fun. There was a great cast of characters too. There was a lot of movement on screen. But for me, in animation especially, you have to focus on the voice actors, and the voices for some of these characters were atrocious, and it took me a good portion of the movie to finally just accept them for who they were. And that was hard for me. So that in and of itself, it really just kind of pulled me out of the enjoyment that I was having, and it kind of drug me down a little bit. Again, like you said, not my favorite of all, but it was fun and I did have a good time with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really funny to know that one of the people in the voice cast who played King Faraday, that was Jonathan Frakes from Star Trek The Next Generation. I never thought I would have ever imagined seeing Jonathan Frakes in a DC animated film cast. But I will agree with you in the voice acting, and that was definitely the biggest flaw with Stephanie Beatrice voicing Batwoman. Now, I love Stephanie Beatrice. I mean, as a diehard Brooklyn Nine-Nine fan, all I could see in this character, it was just Rosa as Batwoman. That's who it was to me. It was Rosa Diaz as Batwoman, and I just could never get into her.
No, that was the worst for me. I am not a Brooklyn Nine-Nine fan, so I don't know what you speak of. However, I know that you are a definite fan of that show. But she was just so monotone, and there was just something about her that she just didn't jive with this character. In a way, I think she was kind of trying to harden Batwoman and kind of make her like this badass bully against Catwoman, but that's not what we needed here. I mean, that's not the Batwoman I know. She has a little bit more life to her, and I don't know, it was just very monotone for me, and I was just very bored with her character. And every time she would go head to head with Catwoman, I was always rooting for the villain, and that's not what you always want. You want to see some appreciation for the heroes on the other side. And I don't know, I just never fell in love with her character, and I just was annoyed with her more than anything. But Catwoman, on the other hand, she was a lot of fun. Again, not in love with the voice for that character, but it kind of suited her after a while because she was just so juvenile.
Yeah, I like Elizabeth Giles as Selena. I think she did a good job. She definitely brought the fun to the character that the character was supposed to have in this story. And I really appreciated that they really took on a lot of the things that make Catwoman Catwoman. Like, they really focused on the anti-hero. They really focused on her really having fun as who she is. I just loved how she played off of all the characters, especially that scene when she's in the party. That's definitely one of the most fun parts, because we all do know, and this has been, and the first person to make her a bisexual character was actually Frank Miller in Batman Year One. That was the very first time we ever saw that. So that was way back in 1988. And I really like that scene when she's basically going to all the couples and she goes to like one woman, like, I love your costume, be careful, or I might steal him. And then she goes later to think I might steal her. Like, I think that's very funny. And I also love the scene where she tries to seduce Batwoman, because Batwoman is known as a lesbian. And you know, it's so funny because we just recently had a recording where we talked about Superman Red Son, and I talked about how the whole thing, how I'm sick and tired of the sexual orientation representation in movies. But in this one, it's done well because it mixes in with the fun, and this time it's something that you expect. And, you know, it's used in all the right ways, and I do like the fact that they did go in some of those directions. It was fun. It just added to the fun.
See, that's how I felt about Superman Red Son. I felt like it was used in all the right ways. But, you know, that's a conversation we've already had. Nonetheless, I do think, yeah, there was some fun elements to it. The party scene, definitely right off the jump, you know, where she appears in one Catwoman suit and then she ends up changing to her current suit. I thought that was fun, just watching her make that transition, and then seeing all the characters, how they were dressed. You know, you had a really fat, frumpy Batman at that party. That was cool. You know, just seeing the little touches of elements. I think the detail to this movie was spot on. I just think for me where it fell flat was the voice characterizations, and there was just some scenes like I felt that maybe went on a little bit too long.
I
You know, like the
agree.
chase scene leading the party. You know, I mean, that aside, I mean, I'm nitpicking, but
No, I agree with you.
it was fun.
I do feel the film ran a little bit longer than it should have. I do agree with you there. But again, other characters that were really interesting. It was nice to see characters like Black Mask in this movie.
Loved him.
You don't see or know much about the character Tobias Whale. That's a big name in the DC Gotham Underground. Also, I was very interested in how they actually brought Cheetah into this story, because Cheetah is not a character you associate with Catwoman. Cheetah is a character you associate with Wonder Woman. So to actually see Cheetah in this story and see Barbara Minerva as the big head master in this whole story in the criminal underground, that was pretty cool. Also, the part that really didn't make sense was in the end when Selina meets up with the criminal underground, how they all have all these strange mythical powers. I was like, really? We're going in this direction? I thought this was just supposed to be a fun heist movie. I mean, like, okay, fine. If you're going to go in that direction, where the hell is John Constantine? You might as well bring him in, you know?
Yeah, I agree. That was a little bit weird.
Fun for you, though, if John Constantine showed up.
You know, I'm a huge fan of Constantine. Anywhere he shows up, I will be a fan of his. But I will say for this particular one, Black Mask stole the show for me. I really enjoyed every time he was on screen. I felt like his character was spot on. The voice was good. Just the right touch of villainous was perfection. But yeah, that ending was a little bit obscure. I'm like, what are we doing here? Because like you said, to me, it felt kind of like a Catwoman version of James Bond. You know, you just had a fun heist film, and then we get into this weird stuff, and I'm like, this doesn't really make sense. Maybe they're gonna tie it in somewhere else in the future, but yeah, for the ending of this particular film, I thought it was very out of place.
Okay, 3 more things that I definitely want to talk about that are very, very positive. The animation, the fact that we got the anime style, very different and very great. I love the bright colors because they've tried to do this anime style once. They did it with Batman Gotham Knight way back when they started this DC film library. They also tried to do it with Batman Ninja, which I really think they failed at tremendously. And this time I think they finally got that anime style right. And also to have that Cowboy Bebop like soundtrack in it that even made it more fun. I thought the soundtrack was absolutely phenomenal. It really made the movie move. And you talked about characters hogging the spotlight. Well, no character hogged the spotlight better than Isis. That version of Isis, that was the most adorable cat I ever saw in anything. And Isis has always been a crucial character in Catwoman's mythos, especially when you go all the way back to Batman, the animated series. But oh my God, the only thing that was missing on Isis was a bright pink bow. That's the only thing she needed.
Yeah, I initially fell in love with Isis when she was in the front seat of her car playing with the cat's eye emerald. I was like, oh my gosh, I just want to goose you right now. You're just so cute, you know? It was an adorable cat. That was a great addition. And one thing I will say, since we are kind of looking at the cast of characters here, this was a very cat-heavy film. I mean, we had Cheetah, we had Cheshire, we had obviously Catwoman, we had Isis. So it was nice to see that mix. And, you know, I mentioned I mentioned Cheshire because you had mentioned the anime, and I think that she was very well done in form of anime, and I think that it really stood out. Her ambiance, her coloring, her personality, the way she moved in this film. So, you know, I don't have a vast knowledge of anime, but I have kind of like early on, and you said Cowboy Bebop, that's one I watched religiously on Adult Swim. So for me, yeah, that soundtrack really did get me moving in that direction.
Yes, thank you very much for mentioning Cheshire. I completely forgot about Cheshire. So yeah, it's a fun movie. It's not the best movie in the world. This one I would give a 2.5 stars out of 4. Like, there's definitely rewatchability here. Definitely. I mean, like, I enjoyed watching it the first time around because I was extremely surprised. And when I rewatched it for the sake of the show, I was like, you know what? This movie is still a lot of fun. I'm glad that I have it in my collection.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna probably say about the same. This was 2.5 for me also. It was fun. It was something that I don't feel like I wasted my time watching. I enjoyed the background cast of characters, and I enjoyed that anime feel to it. But again, not one of my favorites, but it was worth the watch.
So then we got a sequel that I actually was really, 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 really looking forward to. Just because of the fact that, oh my God, I loved that first movie. And then when we finally got it and we got a chance to watch it, I was really upset with what we got. Though I did watch it the second time around for this show, and I gotta say, the second time around, it wasn't that bad, but still, it's not what I wanted. And that was Teen Titans and DC Superhero Girls and the Multiverse of Madness. Wait, and the Multiverse of Mayhem. No!
Mayhem in the Multiverse.
Thank you! And because of the fact that you did that, I am not cutting that scene out. No, I mean,
this was my strongest film. I loved it. And I remember watching your original review, and I was kind of bummed after watching it because I'm like, oh man, I really thought you were going to go in strong with this and really enjoy it. I mean, you did point out a lot of things that you really liked and had fun with. So going into it, watching it, I was kind of like, I had really low expectations, but I loved this film. I think I am just a much stronger Teen Titans Go fan than I realized. And I'm not big on slapstick comedy, but there's just something the Teen Titans Go team does so well. And the way that they integrate with each other, the play off of each other's, verbiage, and then now integrating in these really cute DC superhero girls, it was just a lot of fun. This movie was nonstop entertainment. There was so much going on. Every character was lovable. And can we talk about Aquaman? He is the star of the show.
Okay, well, again, I agree with everything that you said. The only reason why I was disappointed was because of how little the Teen Titans were in this film, because I thought they were going to team up and have an adventure, but it was really a meta thing, so to speak, where they're basically just watching across an episode of DC Superhero Girls. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you was, have you ever watched DC Superhero Girls?
I have, yeah, I have. So, that's why I was saying I was a little bit disappointed when I saw your review because, they're definitely not like up there for me, like the Teen Titans Go, but they are a lot of fun. And I do find myself watching them every time, I'm flipping through channels. I'm like, oh, they're on. And I will definitely sit down and watch the episode that's airing. So this to me was a cool combination, but I see now where you're coming from. Yeah, it was kind of meta in that regard. They were kind of just like watching television versus an actual scene or an actual team up, as you said. So
yeah,
I get that.
Because the truth of the matter is, the story is very good. But the fact that it's just a DC Superhero Girls story, that's the only thing that I just didn't really appreciate, because I'm like, why are the Teen Titans here if it's not anything to do with the Teen Titans, and the fact that the Teen Titans and the DC Superhero Girls literally only talk for about 10 minutes. That's the only thing that I had my beef with. But it's a cool story in general. I mean, I also think that I'm very thankful that I finally watched all of the original 2003 Bruce Timm Teen Titans show. Otherwise, I never would have known who Control Freak was. So when I watched it, I was like, oh, cool, Control Freak's in here. I know who that is. But it was a good story. I really appreciated the fact that it was a great story that involved Supergirl. I really appreciated all the depth that you got from characters like Wonder Woman and Zatanna and Harley Quinn. I was really impressed by the fact that you have the Justice League in there. Okay, what they do with Batman makes me laugh so much. I love that they did what they do with Batman. Aquaman, again, like making him a surfer dude, really, really funny. Don't understand Aqualad, because I'm saying to myself, like, I'm looking at Aqualad and I'm like, why is he not with the Teen Titans? Like, that's where he actually should be. But it's also very strange to see that Wonder Woman's with the DC Superhero Girls and she's not with the Justice League,
Yeah, that was a definite confusion for me. I think they were just trying to like give the DC Superhero Girls some kind of women empowerment or something, like she was taking charge of them. But I think in a way that kind of took away from the Justice League appearance, because she's supposed to be with the Justice League and the Superhero Girls are fine all on their own. They are a cast of characters. Yeah. They're like tweens, they're good. So yeah, that was a little bit weird, but yes, I agree with you. The whole mumbling Batman was genius.
Yeah, it makes me laugh. That just makes me laugh. Also, what I really like about this show is the fact that you also get an opportunity to get to know Jessica Cruz a little bit more, because she's another human Green Lantern that we haven't seen much of unless you really read the comic books. Now, don't get me wrong. We had an excellent depiction of Jessica Cruz in Justice League versus the Fatal Five. Remember that movie? We haven't talked about it in a while, but that was a great version of her. And I also think that it would have been cool to maybe see Miss Martian as part of the DC Superhero Girls as well. But I also love Bumblebee. I mean, Bumblebee is a great character. We've seen her in Teen Titans. We've seen her in Young Justice. And they're fun. But I also like the fact that we even got the Legion of Doom. I kind of love that. And I also have to say my favorite part about that is the fact that Will Friedle from Boy Meets World and Batman Beyond voices Lex Luthor. I kind of love that.
Yes. I was there for that. That was amazing. That was very good voice casting. I think, kind of going back to what you said, maybe we got spoiled when we had the Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans. And so we were kind of expecting that same type of mashup here. And so maybe if they reversed the title and it was a Superhero Girls and Teen Titans Go, we might have not been as disappointed. But nonetheless, this movie was fun. This was energetic. And I don't know, there's just something about this type of animation that just really takes me back to my childhood. And to me, this is what animation should look like. So I love this. This was fun.
I agree. If it was just a standalone DC superhero girls film, I would have watched it regardless. Just because of the fact that it's the same reason why I went and watched Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans, because like I said, I've never watched Teen Titans Go. I'm proud to say that I finally have watched the 2003 Teen Titans, so now it makes a lot more sense. But this was my exposure. I still feel that I do need to watch Teen Titans Go to the movies, and I'm going to watch that one day. And I just also loved the ending of this movie, just because of the fact that we did get the Hanna-Barbera Super Friends looking at this, and they're like, yeah, I don't think we're going to go into this, Very similarly to what they did in the Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans movie with Darkseid. Like, oh yeah, we could go on another adventure, but I'm like, no, this is silly. Let's forget about that. In that scene, when Batman covers Robin's eyes, I kind of died with laughter a little bit.
That whole scene was perfection. I mean, obviously you have to be familiar with that cartoon and that setting, but the way they handled it, the animation was perfect. It was a little bit grittier than the rest of the film, and it just really took you back to that era, and I loved it. I appreciated that so much. That humor was spot on. Like you're saying, Batman covering Robin's eyes, just their mouths gaping open. Yeah, we're gonna forget about this. That was great.
Yeah, a couple of other big strong points that I have to talk about is, again, I loved Supergirl in this movie, and I just loved the dynamic that she has with Superman. I really, really love that. Also, we didn't even mention this once. We never mentioned Batgirl. Batgirl is such a delight in this show. I mean, also because of the fact that Tara Strong voices her. I love how she's trying to make Harley Quinn her bestie. I kind of love that.
Yeah, I guess the overall personalities of these girls individually, yeah. I mean, you could talk about them forever because they are such memorable characters, and the way they integrate on screen, the chemistry that they have, and then when they interact with other female characters, it was just, I mean, you could go on and on about this, but I really do feel that the dynamic that Supergirl had with Superman really stole the show in terms of the grouping of girls, because it was just so heartfelt, and it was just, there was a morality line there, and it was a core of good, feel good about this movie. The rest of it was just straight fun.
Right. No, again, it's a fun movie. I just feel like I was sort of lied to. That's the only reason why I had my issues with it. Like, what would you rate it if you were going to give it your regular rating?
Honestly, even despite the flaws, I think I'm gonna give this a solid 4 because I had fun with it. I really did love it. I really see myself going back and watching it again. I now own it, so I definitely think this is something that I would tell others about and watch again and again. So yeah, I'm gonna stick with a solid 4 despite.
Yeah, after seeing it a second time, I would give it a 3 stars, but I will say that I will never take the word breadbox seriously ever again.
Fair enough.
But now let's get into the best movie in this whole group, in my opinion. I knew that there were so many people that were scared about it just because of the fact that we never really had a lot of movies in recent years from the DC Animated Library that really hit the mark, whether it's from the original movies or whether it's from the DC Universe films, and also considering the fact that they were going to be giving us a very interesting brand new animation style, and that is Batman, Superman, Battle of the Super Sons. Cammy, I fucking loved this movie. This was everything I wanted it to be.
This surprised me because I was a little bit worried going in. I always get worried when Damian Wayne is going to be on the screen. I never know kind of how he's going to be, not projected, but how he's going to depicted. Thank you. That I knew it was a D word, but I never know if I'm gonna love him or hate him. And here I think it was a mix of both, but all in the right ways. In the end, I grew to love him, but I loved the chemistry. There was just such beautiful chemistry between Jonathan and Damian that it just carried the movie along and really made you not hate Damian as much as you normally do, despite the fact that he was still being a little shithead, you know?
Well, it's like I always say about Damien. Yes, he's a little douche, but he's our douche. That's what we always say about him. No, I mean my biggest skepticism and my biggest optimism about this film was that this was going to be the very first time that we ever got John Kent in DC animation, and John Kent is a beloved character amongst DC faithful. One of the comics that I know I've mentioned to you before, Cammie, that you must read is Superman, Lois and Clark, because that's the very first time we were ever introduced to John Kent, and he unfortunately has gone in certain directions that some people are upset about based on the writers who wrote him, but he is a beloved character among so many people, and to know that he was finally going to show up in animation is very scary. But you know what? This was definitely based not entirely in regards to stories, but one of the few things that really surprised me was who wrote this movie, and I did not know that. This movie is written by Jeremy Adams. Jeremy Adams right now is the current writer for the DC Flash comic books. And a lot of people are saying, if you are not reading the Flash right now, you're missing out on some of the most fun that is happening right now in DC Comics. And I finally started reading some Flash books thanks to my local comic book store. And the Flash is now on my pull list once again. I had it on my pull list because I read the Josh Williamson run from DC Rebirth, which was brilliant. I even went back and read the Mark Waid comics from the early 90s, as well as some of the Jeff Johns Flash comics. There's some great people who wrote the Flash, but Jeremy Adams is definitely the one that nobody knows because nobody's reading. And knowing that he wrote this movie, I said to myself, no wonder I had so much fun with this movie, because he knows how to have fun with comics. So knowing that he was part of it, and also having Jack Dylan Grazer voice John Kent was a big thing. And before I finish off my ramble here, what I was getting at was there was a Super Sons comic written in the Rebirth era, and it was written by Peter Tomasi. So I'm pretty sure that Jeremy Adams took a lot of the great elements of that comic and brought it into this movie. I didn't read Super Sons, but a lot of people said the Super Sons was an incredibly good comic, and nobody knows why Peter Tomasi was told to close the series when they did. But I'm pretty sure there's a lot to say and a lot of tribute to that comic run, because like I said, it's fun. The dynamic between John and Damian is beautiful. Also, the dynamic between Batman and Superman, even though they're not too much in this film, they do it very well too.
I really enjoyed when they were on scene together, because you got a different side of both of those characters, where it was more like a parental point of view, you know, how they're dealing with parenthood, how they're dealing with their kids, how they're handling parental situations. So that was fun. You know, from a now older perspective as a comic reader, I definitely enjoyed that. But yeah, I mean, every character that was on scene had a place. There was just overall great integration between characters, and I really enjoyed the villains in this one. I mean, Starro was obviously the main villain, but it really got me kind of further in the understanding of that character and the importance of that character. So yeah, Lex Luthor, of course, was in this film as well. So it was good. It was good. I really did enjoy this film. It was a surprise from start to finish, and I'm really excited to hear that it was actually a comic series. I was not familiar with that, so now I'm gonna have to go hunt that down.
Yeah, I never read Super Sons, but I hear it's absolutely fantastic. I mean, I love Peter Tomasi as a writer. He actually wrote the Green Lantern core comics during the Blackest Night era while Jeff Johns was writing the Green Lantern comics. So that's basically how I got introduced to him. But then, of course, I also read Superman, Lois, and Clark, and went all the way to Superman Reborn, which was him and Dan Jurgens, and they did wonderful things with the Superman mythos. And only to see Brian Michael Bendis come and just tear it to shreds just really pissed off a lot of people. I mean, Philip Kennedy Johnson and Tom Taylor are currently writing Superman comics, and they're not doing the worst job, but considering where Superman was at one point and where it is now, is just something that just makes your heart sink as a comic writer. You mentioned Starro, and Starro was a very interesting thing because Starro is actually the reason why the Justice League came together back in the 1960s with Brave and the Bold issue number 28, and the facsimile edition of that specific issue will be hitting comic book stores this week. We're recording on December 3rd, so that means in just a few days, on Wednesday, go to your local comic book store and pick it up if you want to see the formation of the Justice League and the first appearance of Starro. But Starro is a character that's been used a lot right now. I mean, if you went and saw James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, that was the main daddy. He has been featured in Justice League, and clearly he's here as the reason why Damian and John come together and form this little superhero duo.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that comic, because you put that one on my radar, so that's one I'll be picking up. I would really like to see the introduction of Starro into the comic world. But yeah, it's a surprising film. It's dark in all the right ways, but it's still light and fun. And I think that if you haven't watched this is one that you definitely need to put on your radar, because I think this will surprise a lot of people. I think you need to go in with no expectations and you'll have a lot more fun. Because, you know, a lot of the times people go in automatically just making assumptions about how a character is going to be portrayed, and it kind of just messes with your mind. So I think if you go in with a clean slate on this one, you're going to walk away with a smile on your face.
Yeah, because I think another one of the really interesting parts that I did not anticipate in this movie that we got was the whole thing with Teen Titans. I mean, the fact that it's so hard to think about a Teen Titans team without a Robin. And even though the only one that really speaks is Wonder Girl, that phone conversation, you know, that's a scene that really hits you hard, because it's like we were saying earlier, a lot of people look at Damian as a little shit, but he's our little shit, you know, that's basically what it is. But I think it was really interesting to actually see a character like Wonder Girl basically say, yeah, we just don't want you on the team because you don't play well with others. That's pretty powerful. And then to see him have to go up against characters like Wonder Girl and Kid Flash and Beast Boy because they are abducted by Starros, you know, that's a very interesting thing to see.
I also like, though, how he gets revenge on her when she calls him back after he saves their lives, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna need to call you back, you know, because it is, I mean, it was very merited. It's like, oh, okay, I'm only useful to you now that I've saved your life. Cool. Well, guess what, I'm still the asshole that I was when you called me earlier in the week, but you know, I'll get back to you on that invitation. But yeah, and that's what I say, it's dark in all the right places. It will, you know, hit you in the feels, but it's also fun. And I think it does that nice mix of the dark and the light in this film, and you get to see different sides of Damian. That's why I say he's the character you love to hate and hate to love, but in the end you will love him in this film. And you also do get a nice introduction, if you will, to Jonathan Kent. You know, he is, in my opinion, the star of this show. He's just fun and he's humorous. He's a perfect, well-rounded character. But Damian gets that second nod, which is cool because it's about both of them, you know?
Yeah, and the one thing that I have to say that the most positive thing about John Kent in this movie is the reason why so many people relate to him, especially in this movie. Oh my God, he is the fanboy in all of us in this movie. When he goes to the Batcave for the first time, he goes, oh my God, the Batmobile, the Bat computer, the Bat Teddy, the Bat dinosaur. Like, I'm laughing my head off because I'm like, if I was in his shoes in the Batcave for the first time, I would be doing this exact same thing that he is doing right now. I wonder how his dad felt. I wonder how Superman feels, because he's literally fanboying all over Batman. He's like, hello, your dad is Superman here.
Well, he does have a cute reaction to his dad being Superman, though, you know. But yeah, before he even gets to the Batcave, he's jumping on the stairs, and he's like, "Oh my God, does this mean I get to meet Batman?" And then he goes into the, "Oh yeah, still can't fly."
Yeah, that was really funny.
So absolutely 100%. he's the fanboy that we all are. And I think that's why this movie is so fun, because the boys are so young. You can see a lot of the elements of you as a comic reader over the years, you know, how you've kind of grown up with these characters and learned to love them in different ways. You know, we love them for their darkness, we love them for their light and for what they bring. And I think seeing it from the eyes of a child or a teen is unique, because it allows you for a moment as an adult to remember what it's like to meet your heroes for the first time. And there's a
Right.
beauty to that.
So there's one part about this movie that I just didn't understand, and I didn't know if it was just there for comedic purposes. And I just really, there are times when I see certain things or read certain things, and I say to people, I need to sit down with the person who put this together and ask them, what was going in your mind when you wrote this? What the hell was the point of the cow?
Oh yeah. Okay, so the only thing here's the only thing I can think of with the cow is that it was a nod to Superman because he grew up on a farm.
Yeah.
That's where I placed it in my head, but then I'm like, well, why does Damien have a cow though?
Yeah, like, why does Damien have the cow? Why does Damien keep the cow in a cave? And, like, why hasn't the cow dropped dead because it hasn't been milked, you know? That's the part that didn't make sense. Like, how long? I mean, like, Cammie, you deal with a lot of livestock, but I don't know if you've ever dealt with a cow before. I know you deal with horses, but, like, I'm saying to myself, is a cow is not milked. Does the cow die? Like, I don't know the anatomies of a cow.
A cow must be milked. It is definitely part of their anatomy. You can't leave because their udders fill up, and it's a bad thing if they don't get milked on the daily. So yeah, the whole cow in a cave thing, my immediate instincts of caring for livestock went into full alert mode. I'm like, where is this cow's alfalfa? Where is its water source? You know, how is this cow alive right now? And why does Damien have a cow? You know,
I didn't understand this. Like, Damien with a cat. Like, I could imagine him having a good friendship bond with Ace the Bat Hound. But why the hell? I didn't understand that.
The only thing beyond the nod to Superman growing up on a farm that I could think of is it's kind of like Batman owning everything. So why not own a cow? You know,
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of, but even that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I completely agree with you there. The cow was very out of place, comedic to a point, but I think as a watcher, you still had compassion for the cow's well-being. So
yes, I just didn't understand it. Like, it didn't take away from the movie for me, but I just didn't understand the cow. I had to ask you that question. I mean, I love the scene when they go to the Fortress of Solitude and John Kent throws the key into the lock and then Davey says, great, now turn the key. Like, I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, the dynamic between those two was fun. And it was fun to watch them kind of come into their own on their own without the guidance of their parents. You know, they kind of just learned to work with each other and work through their own flaws. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a big surprise for me, and it was by far my favorite of all the films that we watched.
Yeah, I personally will say, much like Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I want a sequel. I really think they can do a great sequel.
Oh, yeah.
There's so much more to tell in this story.
I could definitely see. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, they could go on adventures now that they've made this bond, and now that they've kind of solidified who they are as individuals, they know their parents' secrets, you know, that kind of thing. They can really be that dynamic duo. And again, I think I'll get a little bit more context if I dive into the comic to kind of see if that is what transpires within the comics. But if that is the case where they have multiple meetings and adventures, then I don't see why we couldn't get a sequel here.
And what did you think of the animation, considering the fact that it was a very unique CGI?
I liked it. Again, I think it added to that dark ambiance of the film. I was a little bit worried at first because the first scene on the farm, I'm like, this is a different type of animation, but I really grew to love it. And I think it really worked well for the film and for all the different dimensions of the film that we get into, you know, regardless of where we found ourselves, whether it was the animation really just spoke volumes for everything that we got to see. So yeah, the
Yeah.
CGI aspect of it was a lot of fun.
I think what I really liked about the CGI aspect was that it still really felt like you were watching a 2D animated film. And what's very interesting is DreamWorks seems to be doing something very similar with their animation style, because I just watched the movie The Bad Guys and I just saw a trailer for that new Puss in Boots film. It's a very interesting 3D style of animation that still pays homage to 2D animation. And I'm really glad that there are animation studios that are trying to do that, because I really don't want 2D animation to be classified as dead at this point in time. I think that there's just still so many great things that you can do with 2D animation.
I'm glad that you made that point, because my brain didn't really go there as to why that's exactly it. It's cartoons of my childhood. It's so caught up in doing the latest and the greatest and having this, you know, epic movie that we kind of lose the animation and all of that. So yeah, for me, that was definitely a bonus.
Yeah, this movie, hands down for me, gets a 4 out of 4. Perfect score, because I just love it. And I love the music. The theme song for the movie is fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. The music was fun. The animation was on point. The dialogue, the characters, so solid 4 for me as well.
So that's going to wrap up another DC animated live show. Cami, I really appreciate chatting with you. I mean, look, happy hunting in your brand new reading adventure, since I pretty much discussed some good recommendations for you. I mean, hey, if you read the Super Sons and you tell me, Steve, you got to check this out, I will definitely finally check them out. I mean, as someone who loves Peter Tomasi, I'm surprised I haven't read it. But then again, considering what I am currently enveloped in right now, Neil Gaiman's Miracle Man, I don't really know if I'm going to want to go take on another adventure at this point in time. But I will say that I am really excited for 2023, just because we have so many good titles coming out in the next couple of months. So I'm just really hoping that we get a little bit more of Battle of the Super Sons and a little bit less of Beware My Power moving forward.
I agree. And I think, you know, you nailed it perfectly with the Beware My Power. It's just too fast paced. I think if they learn to slow it down a little bit, just maybe hone in on a couple of focal points instead of bringing in everything from every facet, it's too much all at once. But if they stick to this, you know, kind of Super Sons pacing, then I think we'll be okay. But you know, DC has a lot to work out. They have a lot of problems internally, and I think it happens for not only the live action side of things, but I do see that it bleeds into the animation side of things also. They just don't listen to their fans like Marvel listens to their fans, and I don't know that we'll ever get that, but we can be hopeful.
Well, I don't think Marvel listens to their fans either, because if they did, Phase 4 wouldn't have sucked so royally outside of Spider-Man No Way Home. I'm just saying. But anyway, everybody, that's going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave your comments in the box below. We would love to chat with you. And I'm really glad that we are closing 2022 on a high note, and there are going to be a few more videos on the way. But let me tell you guys something major is happening right here very, very soon. I'm going to be taking an opportunity to meet on another person's channel, one of the most well-known names in the comic book community here on YouTube. So if you are new to our channel watching this because of that, let me just say welcome, and let me just say that big things are coming for this channel in 2023. But in the meantime, everybody, we'll see you in the next one.